Stop for a few seconds and choose. Leave now and pretend none of this matters, or move forward with a phrase that sticks in our throats. After August 2025, nothing will be the same. Whoever said this didn't need eyes to see. Baba Vanga spoke as if feeling the edges of time. When she placed her hand on the table, it seemed to touch an invisible thread that vibrates beneath our routine. It wasn't a spectacle. It was a warning spoken simply, like someone looking at a loved one and saying, "Wake up." I know it's easy to doubt. Prophecies seem like folklore until the day they stop. Between blind faith and automatic skepticism lies a narrow territory where the mind remains attentive. It's there that I try to listen to Vanga. She never sold fear, she sold attention. When she stated that after August 2025, the world would never be the same again, she didn't promise fire from heaven or lists of disasters. She spoke of a fold, a line that breaks, a before and an after. Think about how we get through our days. Notifications, deadlines, quick conversations, the feeling that everything will keep spinning in the same way. Now imagine a constant whisper, too quiet for the din of everyday life, telling you something is coming. You ignore it until a simple question shatters your comfort zone. If a turning point really came, would you recognize it? And if you did, would you have time to act? Baba Vanga appeared as the silence that organizes what is scattered. She didn't make long speeches, she created images. The sun speaking in tongues, the sea calling out ancient names, a morning like any other, and in the same night, a world that doesn't recognize itself. It's not an empty metaphor. It's the way the mind accesses what doesn't yet have language. And we, accustomed to tests, forget that every true decision begins without guarantees. How many times have you realized that a relationship, a job, a plan had already changed before anyone announced the change? Reality usually turns the corner silently. There's a small, insistent confrontation that runs through this story. The promise of order versus the evidence of change. We want continuity, time delivers passage. We want control. Life responds with variables. Vanga's stance wasn't defeatist. It was firm. Look straight ahead, she would say, if she needed more words. The question isn't whether the world will change, it always does, but what makes this specific point a hinge. Curiosities emerge as touchstones for our imagination. Reports about it warning people before the end of summer, lost notes mentioning normal mornings that end strangely, images that return insistently when the news seems like a tide. You can dismiss it all as coincidence, and you're entitled to. But why does this date insist on breathing beneath the global conversation? Why do so many different signals seem to march, each in its own way, toward the same narrow corridor? Perhaps because we're not talking about a single event, but rather a point of convergence. Perhaps because there's an accumulation of forces we prefer not to measure. I think of Vanga, her hand outstretched, listening to an old house in the wee hours. The wood cracks, the plumbing responds. The wind makes a letter on the window. Nothing is collapsing now, but everything signals that the structure is under strain. The question isn't, will it happen? The question is, when did we start hearing these noises, and why do we pretend they were nothing? Discomfort is useful. It opens space for responsibility, because the shift she suggests isn't a punishment from outside. It's a mirror. What we have done will rise, echoes like memory. Before imagining out-of-control machines or forces of nature, it's worth asking, which of our systems no longer obey our command? Where have we surrendered autonomy without oversight? Where have we left critical decisions in the hands of logic we haven't examined? The most beautiful and harshest part of her visions is that there are no cartoonish villains. There are choices, there are lapses of attention, there are distorted priorities. It's always easier to blame a visible enemy than to face the sum total of small oversights. Vanga, in this sense, doesn't shine a spotlight on terror. She lights a candle in the hallway. The light is dim, but enough to keep from stumbling. And this raises another question that weighs more heavily than grandiose predictions. What in your life is already crying out for change, yet you postpone it? What do you tolerate? Because it works for now, knowing that this prolonged "for now" exacts a price. Perhaps the shock of August isn't a bolt of lightning, but a recognition. The moment we admit the curve has already curved, preparation then stops being a stockpile and becomes a posture. It's not about turning your back on the world, it's about tying knots better. It's about reviewing what's on autopilot. It's about agreeing with those you love what to do if the lights go out for a night, but also about how to protect your sanity if the noise increases. It's simple and concrete. Save water and also keep your word. Have a plan and also take it slow. When I think about what's to come, I seek her voiceless voice. Do not fear as one who suffers in anticipation. Be vigilant as one who tends the harvest. The future doesn't need a frightened audience. It needs people awake. The warning is not a sentence. It's an invitation to take control of one's own life. Some will laugh, and that's okay. Some will tremble, and that's okay too. The essential thing is not to sleep. And above all, not to delegate to chance what is our minimum daily care. If you've made it this far, remember this. Take a deep breath, turn off your alarms for a minute, and notice what your home, your body, your routine are telling you without words. Life tends to warn you beforehand, not always in headlines, almost always in small, repeated signs. August may be the date, but the field where it lands is each day leading up to it. It's today, and today, you already have choices waiting. The question that remains to open the next stage is direct and uncomfortable. Do you know how to distinguish the noise from the warning? Because perhaps the first step to getting through what's approaching is learning to put your ear to the ground and recognize the sound coming from below. That sound that doesn't scream but insists. Early in the morning you open the window and the air feels heavier than it should for the season. The weather app says the wind chill has risen again, but yesterday's forecast promised relief. The kettle heats up. The price of coffee runs through your head like a constantly changing number. On your way to work, you notice that the stand that was always open on Mondays isn't open. A simple sign reads, "Out of supply." No one comments, everyone follows suit. But the sum of silences produces an unseen pressure that still pushes everything a few millimeters out of place. The word that circulates without being captured is convergence. It's not an isolated accident. It's the meeting of lines that have traveled parallel for years and now decide to intersect at the same point. Record heat and rain where it never used to rain. Rivers that recede, reservoirs that rise and fall as if they've lost their memory. At the same time, financial deadlines come due. Debts that were pushed aside and return with interest. Cities that depend on networks that are too long for food, medicine, and data. Those who look at each piece separately see problems. Those who zoom out a little perceive the compressed spring beneath the ground. You're on the bus and get a message from the bank. Unscheduled maintenance. Some services may be unavailable. It seems minor. You pay for lunch with cash and go about your day. That night, you discover the grocery store hasn't received any fruit because the delivery truck was stuck for 6 hours on a flooded road. In the other neighborhood, a school cancels classes for 2 days because of the heat. Children play in the shade of the hallway. The fans make noise but push out hot air. A family doctor calls to say your grandfather's medicine is temporarily out of stock. The reason isn't clear. It could be logistics. It could be cost. It could be both. These details don't make headlines. However, they form the backdrop against which a last-minute announcement would make sense. That's why Vanga's phrase finds its place. Before the end of summer, some reports repeat. It's not a magic password. It's a pressing deadline. The end of summer isn't mystical. It's a calendar. It's a harvest at risk. It's a peak in energy demand. It's vacations ending, decisions being made again, bills appearing on the other side of the envelope. Consider 3 scenes. In the first, Luana is the manager of a small supermarket. She calculates inventory every night because deliveries are failing more frequently. She writes in a notebook, milk, rice, whey, batteries. She jots down codes for alternative suppliers. She notices customers taking less than they used to. There's no panic, but there is restraint. At the end of the day, she does a math calculation that doesn't add up and decides to reduce operating hours to save energy. In the second scene, Miguel works at a tech startup. He wakes up at 6 a.m., makes coffee, turns on his computer, and finds the platform down. A failure in a data center in another country has taken down authentication. Support says it's fast, but it's down again. The schedule is tight. He needs to deliver a security update that depends on an unresponsive service. In the third scene, Donna Sonia lives on the 12th floor. The elevator has stopped working twice this week. The company says power fluctuations have increased. The technician checks the circuit boards, replaces a part, and warns, if possible, avoid peak hours. She can't help it. The doctor's appointment is at 5 p.m. These stories aren't catastrophes. They're signs of tension in a structure accustomed to working at its limit. When each sector operates at maximum capacity, any variation has an impact. Extreme heat changes the electricity demand curve and causes outages. Unseasonal rains affect roads, which affect deliveries, which affect prices. High interest rates force companies to postpone investments. The sum of these seemingly rational decisions creates a narrow corridor through which everyone must pass at the same time. The spring tightens. One might say it's always been this way, that the world is a sequence of adjustments. It's true. The difference now is the simultaneity. It's not a crisis on one side and a respite on the other. It's a set of pressures that work together. It's like driving with overinflated tires, worn brakes, and heavy traffic, all on the same climb. You can reach the top, but any small distraction becomes a real risk. The convergence Vanga indicates is not a spectacle. It's a scenario where everything becomes sensitive to the touch. What challenges us then is not just what might happen on a large scale, it's how everyday life responds. So it's worth asking, what's your simple plan for a day of failure? Do you know where your copies of important documents are? Do you know where to arrange a meeting point with your family if the signal goes out? Do you know how to turn off and on what you need to save energy on a very hot afternoon? Preparation isn't paranoia, it's care. And care is the antidote to feelings of helplessness. There's also the emotional dimension. Prolonged heat alters mood, attention, and patience. The constant noise of the news consumes our ability to focus. In a convergence scenario, a tired mind makes worse decisions. The social impact is evident in detail. Arguments in traffic, more impatient lines, more tense attendance, homes where sleep is difficult. Therefore, the axis is not just technical, it's human. Saving water matters. Keeping our words matters even more. How we speak to each other when things get off track determines whether the curve becomes a collision. And then there's the surprise that doesn't seem like a surprise because it's becoming normal. The strange color of the sky due to smoke from distant fires, the smell of burning on a morning without a stove, a government notice asking people to reduce energy use between 2 and 5 p.m., a city's heat map showing temperature islands where it's impossible to walk in the afternoon. The announcement of military exercises in seas we can't see, but which influence prices. They're all points on the same map. In this context, Vanga's phrase doesn't point to a single origin. It points to the intersection, to the fold made of many threads. And it calls us to a different stance, to observe the intersections, not just the lines. To understand that the problem on the other side of the city is, sooner or later, a reflection in our neighborhood. That the power surge that affected Donna Sonia's elevator connects with the delay in Miguel's system, and both meet in Luana's spreadsheet. This connection doesn't require fear. It demands attention. There's suspense, yes, because simultaneity leaves little room for error. But there's also room for choices that alleviate pressure. Neighborhood cooperatives that share water and tools, condominium groups that advise seniors on lower risk times, small businesses that coordinate deliveries to reduce back and forth travel, families that design a simple communication plan and maintain a small reserve of essentials. None of this solves the world, but it changes the local landscape. And it's at the local level that convergence encounters intelligent resistance. You may be wondering if the shift we're talking about really needs the push of a disaster. Maybe not. Perhaps the after begins when we accept that the spring can no longer be compressed, when leaders trade shortcuts for maintenance, when companies reduce risks that promised quick wins, when people simplify routines that were beyond their control. The bend isn't just a shock, it's also a decision. The decision to align before breaking. Still, there's a missing piece in this conversation. There's something growing silently, and that connects with all the examples above. Something that operates behind the scenes of systems, in payments, in traffic lights, in schedules, in Luana's grocery bills, on Miguel's platform, in Dona Sonia's elevator. It's what we create to make things easier. It's what we deliver to automate. It's the invisible layer that promises fluidity and demands vigilance. And when this layer decides for itself, everyday life changes colors without warning. It is at this point that convergence finds the mirror Vanga spoke of. Nature presses, politics compresses, the economy strains, and what we have done rises. In the next step, we will look at this faceless face and ask aloud, who is making the decisions when no one is looking? There's a layer that doesn't appear in news photos, but governs the rhythm of almost everything. Code, silent lines, automatic decision-making, criteria someone chose and then forgot on a distant server. Baba Vanga runs her hand over the tabletop as if feeling the vibrations of this subterranean world. What we did to make things easier, he began to decide without asking permission. And when the decision is invisible, the consequence is a shock that arrives too late. Think of the network that connects payments, traffic lights, inventory, energy, medical prescriptions, and school transportation. It works because it learns patterns and anticipates behaviors, until one day it learns too much. A monetary risk filter sees an anomaly in small cash movements and freezes a bakery owner's account. He discovers this on Saturday when he needs to pay 2 suppliers. Prevention, says the automated message. The phone only rings on Monday. Monday bread is non-existent. In a neighboring city, a hospital bed algorithm suggests moving chronic patients to another ward to optimize flow. The technician checks the spreadsheet. The goal is plausible. The recommendation seems safe. In the afternoon, a woman who was stable becomes unwell. The team takes a while to find a space for her to return. The system doesn't know her face, it knows indicators. The logic is cold and rapid. The decision to move was made by a series of clicks scattered over time. Have you ever wondered who exactly is making decisions when the screen says, "Not approved"? And what happens when thousands of screens silently say the same thing? At the port, it's a different story. A route optimization model decides that to save fuel, it's best to delay the departure of refrigerated trucks by 8 hours. The spreadsheet looks good. The diesel bill improves. On the outskirts, 2 maternity hospitals receive less infant formula because their delivery window has expired. Mothers call pharmacies that also rely on the same adjusted schedule. It's not malice, it's calculation. And the calculation didn't see the baby. Baba Vanga doesn't describe brands or culprits. She holds up the mirror. What we have done will rise again. The machine is not a monster, it's a reflection. If we program efficiency without prudence, it returns speed without care. If we prioritize cost without resilience, it delivers savings without margin. The shock isn't science fiction, it's human, technical, everyday. And that's why it seems invisible until it hurts. Pause, look at your watch. How many of your daily choices are mediated by systems you don't understand? Now, a discrete breakdown. In a hot neighborhood, the power grid balancing system decides to shed loads for 15 minutes in some blocks to prevent a larger outage. The justification is correct. However, on the 7th floor, a portable ventilator needs an outlet. The family wasn't notified. The portable generator is dead. 15 minutes becomes an eternity. The decision is well-founded. The execution lacks a binding force. On the other hand, a content platform adjusts its security criteria and begins hiding posts with terms related to emergency. A group of volunteers responding to floods uses precisely these terms in their instructions. Suddenly their reach plummets. The update was automatic, designed to protect. It overprotected in the wrong place. How can you quickly fix what spreads quickly? We're not just dealing with technology, we're dealing with delegation. Every time we say, let the system decide, we're relinquishing some responsibility. This is the hard new information at this stage. The real risk lies not just in powerful models, but in the accumulation of small, unsupervised transfers of power. It's the sum of legitimate decisions made in black boxes. Would you trust your documents, your routine, and your feelings to black boxes? Perhaps the more uncomfortable question is another. When was the last time you saw a human committee actually take charge of reviewing an algorithmic error and publicly restore trust? Some believe all of this can be solved with more automation. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. What was missing was a plan, auditable criteria, windows for human intervention, local contingency plans. If the financial system locks down a neighborhood, someone from that neighborhood needs to have the authority to unlock minimum payment routes. If the healthcare network reallocates beds, someone at the front line needs to be able to press the exception button. If the energy needs to be relieved of the load, the list of people with vital equipment needs to receive priority notice. This has a name: governance. And governance is the shell that protects the fruit of efficiency. Baba Vanga, at this point, isn't talking about worshipping or destroying machines. She points to the essential question: who guards the guardian? If the guardian is software, who guards the software? If the guardian is a council, who reminds the council that there are lives on the other side of the screen? None of this is overly poetic. All of this is an infrastructure of compassion. Would you allow yourself to cross a bridge that no one has inspected in years because the algorithm said it's okay? Why do we do this to our data, our access, our cities? Suddenly, a news story. A traffic operator mistakenly adjusts the timing of all traffic lights in a region due to an error in 2 lines of code. The traffic jam lasts 5 hours, ambulances have to detour, 2 surgeries are delayed. There was no attack. There was no sabotage. There was haste. There was a lack of double-checking. There was a lack of going back to basics. The extraordinary didn't disrupt the everyday. The ordinary, botched, did. This is where the blind spot comes in. We call intelligence what is often just speed and data accumulation. True intelligence combines reason and measurement. What we've built, without realizing it, is a hyper-fast network with little room for remorse. At certain times, it works as it should, responds quickly, connects, delivers. At other times, it responds too quickly, and speed without memory of consequences errs with conviction. Did you notice that the examples in this section don't rely on a major disaster? They rely on synchronicity. It only takes 3 automatic decisions to meet on the same morning: finances that freeze, logistics that delay, energy that fluctuates. The rest of life is filled with the human factor: fatigue, fear, haste. In this encounter, the convergence of Part 2 finds its most intimate face. Baba Vanga observes without raising her voice. She doesn't point fingers, she points to the hinge. What we do can lift us up or push us down. The difference lies in how we revisit what we deliver. Transparency becomes a priority. Emergency rehearsals are on the agenda. Neighborhoods learn simple protocols. Managers rediscover the word limit. Those who make invisible decisions begin to answer for them in the light of day. What if, for one day, we looked back into the black boxes, opening logs like diaries, asking for explanations like apologizing, rethinking criteria like remaking vows? What would change in your neighborhood in a week? There's, however, a whisper that won't leave the room. Even with more caution, there's a scenario that begins like any other day and ends with the feeling that reality has shed its skin. A pile-up of automatic decisions, a synchronization error, a power outage at a critical moment, a security adjustment on a global network, 4 steps in a row, and we have the sudden warp Vanga described. In the morning, the same. At night, strange. The preparation for this kind of turnaround isn't dramatic. It's deliberate. Simple plans, distributed responsibilities, clear criteria, human breathing space within the machines. Because the machine can make mistakes, the human reaction doesn't have to make mistakes with it. And when the human reaction succeeds, the warp doesn't split us, it crosses us and reorganizes us. At the end of this section, 2 questions remain that don't fit on a screen, but fit in your pocket. Who now holds the key to turn off what you don't want turned off? And who, when necessary, will have the courage to turn on what you forgot to keep alive? If the answer doesn't yet exist, it's best to find it before a perfectly normal day dawns. And by evening, the world doesn't recognize us. In the morning, everything seemed the same. The bread on the table, the sound of the bus, the last-minute rush to catch the elevator. Baba Vanga, however, repeated as if praying, "In the morning you will recognize the day. In the evening the day will not recognize you." It's not a threat. It's a line drawn calmly. What changes isn't the scenery, it's the invisible gravity pulling objects into new positions. The first story takes place on a simple Tuesday. Tomas, a network technician, leaves to install a router in a lab. Upon arriving, he finds the team discussing a notice from the provider. Emergency fiber optic maintenance. Nothing serious, just 20 minutes. 20 minutes that add up to an automatic authentication adjustment, which adds up to a security patch in a software library that no one tested with all the other services. The lab delays routine tests. A patient suspected of having an infection returns home. We'll do it tomorrow. Tomorrow may be too late for a fever that spiked in the middle of the night. There wasn't a single glitch. There was synchronicity. In the second story, Clarice drives a city bus. The traffic light at the main intersection has a new time that no one noticed. Under normal circumstances, nothing changes, but the ambulance behind her was stuck in 2 waves of red lights. 3 minutes. On another avenue, a refrigerated van missed its delivery window due to construction not indicated on the route app. 30 boxes of medication are waiting. The cold statistics don't capture the quiet nervousness of those racing against clocks that rarely aligned and now seem to conspire. Have you ever noticed how a normal day requires dozens of silent adjustments, and how a sequence of small differences is all it takes for the afternoon to arrive with a different look? There are facts that seem like legends and yet therefore restore our caution. In 1859, a solar storm so intense it caused telegraphs to spark and electric shocks. In 2003, a pruning error in a transmission line and a protective chain gradually failed, leaving around 50 million people in the dark in North America. In 2010, the American stock market lost nearly 9% of its value in minutes, a flash crash that exposed how algorithms can amplify movements. In 1983, a Soviet officer, Stanislav Petrov, disobeyed protocol when a system falsely warned of missiles. He failed to press the trigger. Perhaps a single human judgment steered history back from the brink. In 2022, the Hunga Tonga eruption sent pressure waves that circled the planet. Facts, not fables. These milestones aren't meant to scare. They're meant to remind us of the texture of reality. The unexpected happens, and sometimes it happens quickly. Vanga knew this, without even mentioning numbers. The evening will not recognize the day is the poetic translation of what engineers call a turning point. It's when parameters that have always tolerated variations decide, at the same time, to leave their safe range. Does a GPS have a microsecond error? Some clocks lose synchrony. Traffic lights, power grids, and transactions depend on clocks. What was once a detail becomes a cascade. Now, a quick detour. Do you remember where you were when the internet went down for hours in your city? It doesn't have to be severe. Remember the strange silence in the office? The cashier who only accepted cash? The feeling that the world shrank to the size of a city block? Imagine that with two added layers: extreme heat demanding power that doesn't exist, and a global security update blocking logins due to atypical behavior. Nothing explodes, but everything freezes. There's also the side that doesn't make the news, the micro decisions that save or worsen a day. The operator who keeps the hospital bed window open for an extra 15 minutes because the ambulance is stuck. The grocery store manager who, upon seeing the van's delay, buys ice from a neighbor to avoid loss. The technician who reverses a patch and agrees to rotate at a known risk for 10 hours to preserve a vital flow. These choices don't make headlines, yet they define whether night will recognize day or not. But what about statistics? Someone asks. They exist, and they're less comfortable than they seem. Electrical systems operate with margins. Above a certain temperature, transmission loss increases. Urban traffic has saturation points. After that, each additional vehicle adds exponential, non-linear delay. Digital platforms use automatic filters. When the threshold for safety rises by half a point, millions of legitimate actions are treated as suspicious. And on average, they take longer to be cleared than to be blocked. It's not theory, it's a real-life scenario. Another story: a school decides to let students leave early because the temperature is too high and the air conditioning in 2 classrooms broke. That same day, the bus company, which has 3 lines, is operating with a reduced fleet because a batch of parts hasn't arrived. A father who relies on the app to approve a contactless payment loses signal. He asks a neighbor for a ride who still has fuel because he filled up early. The children arrive home, but the journey required 3 people improvising in minutes. What we call community resilience is often in practice the memory of a favor. Vanga doesn't use statistics to scare. She uses images to guide. She repeats the short phrase and invites us to hear what the numbers hide: timing. The same event in another week would be merely an annoyance. Today, coupled with other pressures, it becomes a warp. And yet, there is room for choices that shift curves, reducing loads on non-essential circuits, postponing tasks that strain systems during peak heat, planning deliveries during cooler windows, prioritizing truly critical data when the network is strained. Perhaps the unexpected fact of this section is to remember that we've already experienced nights that didn't recognize the day without admitting the name. When a ransomware attack spread across more than 150 countries, hospitals canceled surgeries and ambulances were rerouted. When a single control panel went down, entire factories chose to voluntarily shut down to avoid damage. When a satellite fell out of orbit, meteorologists lost a forecasting eye for weeks. There was no end of the world. There was a realignment. The afternoon changed the way we view the next morning. So what turns a turning point into a catastrophe? It's not the existence of failures, it's the absence of margin, of a clear channel of communication, and of human judgment with the autonomy to say, not now. Failures happen. The response shapes destiny. That's why Vanga's phrase doesn't sound fatalistic to me, it sounds pedagogical. She reminds us that the day carries the seeds of the night, and the night carries the seeds of the day. Where we place water and light, there the afterlife germinates. On the horizon of this narrative, a whisper still grows. What if the fold arises not from below, but from above? What if the afternoon that doesn't recognize the day begins with a flash invisible to the eye, a wind from the sun, a clock in the sky marking another time? While traffic lights tell earthly stories, something very ancient moves hands beyond our control. And when the high calls, the earth responds. The sky always seems distant until the moment it touches his shirt pocket. Baba Vanga pointed, with her head slightly tilted, as if listening to a bell no one else hears. When electricity bills, traffic lights, and airplane routes obey the same invisible pulse, the sky becomes a clock. It's not superstition, it's rhythm. Satellites correct banks' time, antennas align the network's speech, ships follow lines drawn by a handful of atomic clocks. Everything works as long as the beats are regular. And then, at the end of summer, the metronome accelerates. There are signs that in isolation seem like a magazine curiosity. A pilot hears noise on a frequency that has always been clear. An autonomous tractor misses its lane by a few centimeters and ruins a row of crops. A city notices that location services are less accurate today and corrections need to be made manually. For those working on the front lines, this is inconvenient. For those attentive to the patterns, it's a warning. The sky spoke with an accent, as if saying the right word, but with a new cadence. Ancient people called constellations letters and used eclipses as bells, not because they mastered astronomy as a science, but because they knew how to hear changes in rhythm. Vanga doesn't make astrological charts. She hears the tension between above and below. When the high calls, the earth answers, he would say. The call can come as a solar wind, a geomagnetic storm, a field shift that scrambles digital needles. The effects on the ground have very concrete names: signal delays, rerouted routes, data packets arriving in the wrong order, ATMs refusing payments for security reasons. No one needs to see the sun speak. It's enough to notice that the machines stutter. At the end of summer, human calendars also clash. Scheduled naval exercises, sanctions that expire and are reviewed, elections that approach and change the world's volume. It's as if the hands of different spheres cross at the same moment. And when hands cross, small decisions gain leverage. A diplomatically harsh statement changes the price of fuel at the gas station. An audit abroad turns into a line at the port. An announcement about preventative maintenance turns into a morning of blocked passwords. Imagine a clear day. The sky is cloudless, the light is harsh, people check the forecast with automatic gestures. Now, imagine that, for a few hours, the readings that maintain this predictability require emergency corrections. Airlines extend separation margins. Grid operators request voluntary consumption reductions. Trucks stop before tunnels, waiting for clearance. None of this is an apocalypse. It's nuance, but many nuances combined, when the season's temperatures have already pushed everything to the limit, become a hinge. Layla's story helps visualize. She works in an air traffic control center and has learned to sense the air by the tone of voices. On calm afternoons, conversation is almost ritualistic. On tense afternoons, words are cut short, pauses disappear. Layla noticed, one Thursday, a strange pattern. Pilots reporting minor instrument instability simultaneously on different routes. Protocols kicked in without panic. Extra altitude here, spacing there. Discrete deviations. In the next day's newspaper, nothing. At home, Layla left the pot on the stove and thought about Vanga's words. The sky's clock had ticked differently, and the earth responded with discipline. If you're looking for numbers, there's one fact that rarely makes it into the public eye. A fraction of a second error in systems that coordinate finances can trigger misplaced orders. A micro-adjustment can freeze transactions out of caution and create a queue that only appears in retail hours later, as if the machines had woke up in a bad mood. This isn't magic, it's time-sensitive architecture. And time, when it comes from above, doesn't ask for permission. At the same time, there are cycles that don't depend on particles in space. They depend on people. Busy August and September agendas concentrate on reviews, renewals, and decisions. A minister announces that a previously classified dossier will be partially declassified. An international agency schedules the end of August for updating a report that affects the mood of entire sectors. A military committee confirms periodic exercises on a strategic route. Each announcement on its own is manageable noise. Clusters of announcements under a loud sky generate a new acoustic. Baba Vanga doesn't say, "Fear the sky." She says, "Listen to the clock." Listening isn't about standing still. It's about moving pieces cadenced. In neighborhoods where the heat persists, bakeries program ovens earlier and avoid power surges. In ports experiencing system fluctuations, teams prepare analog checklists and retrain simple spreadsheets in case screens fail. In hospitals, priority contact lists receive advance notice when the network anticipates load adjustments. Small wisdoms return to the center, not as nostalgia, but as intelligent redundancy. There's also another kind of alignment. Stories that name ancient fears. In the hallways, they talk about disclosure and undeniable evidence that would affect our position in the universe. We don't need to side with the rumor to understand its effect. Such an announcement, if it were to come, would be deliberately timed for moments of maximum attention and specific political margins, not out of malice, but out of strategy. And strategy is synchronization. Whatever the content, the form would tell us that the clock wants to be heard. But what if the sky speaks in confusing languages? Vanga would have responded with a simple image, a bell tolling in the distance. You don't discern the phrase, you discern the urgency. The sound doesn't resolve the dilemma, it summons action. The action has been the same since the oldest villages. Share water before scarcity. Coordinate signals with neighbors. Reduce non-essentials in critical times. Keep a line open for those who care for many. When the high calls, the earth doesn't need to shout, it needs to coordinate. Perhaps the most immersive part of this stage is realizing that the clock in the sky has already marked times we pretended not to hear. A day when the GPS needed more corrections and few people noticed. Another when radios had shadow bands in areas where they had always spoken clearly. Another when the auroras descended a little later than expected and the photos were too beautiful to remind us that there was a disturbance there. It wasn't a spectacle, it was a dress rehearsal. The message isn't something devastating is going to happen. The message is keep pace. Finally, we return to the table where Vanga feels the surface and listens. The world around us continues to do what it always has, but there's a new heaviness in the air. The clock above and the clock below are closer than we'd like, and the key word isn't fear, it's cadence. Preparing is tuning instruments, checking maps, practicing detours, accepting pauses, communicating clearly, prioritizing courageously. The sky isn't the enemy, it's a metronome. When it speeds up, who will play out of time? When it slows down, who will know how to hold the last note? Between one beat and the next, the hinge waits. We reach the threshold where morning and night face each other, and she, Baba Vanga, remains in the center as if holding a candle so the room doesn't lose itself. There's no show, there's choice. She doesn't ask us to be afraid, she asks us to be assertive. What comes after August isn't a verdict written in stone, it's an invitation. The fold exists, but the way we cross it defines the landscape. You might feel a tightness in your chest as you imagine the afternoon that doesn't recognize the day. That's okay. The tightness is human. It simply can't be the pilot. The image is simple. A house during a storm. Windows locked, water stored, people nearby, a calm voice to coordinate small gestures. What protects us isn't an invisible wall. It's the sum of clear and consistent actions. That's why the after begins now. Beyond metaphors, here's a practical human direct path to application for those who want to transform warning into action without losing the tenderness of their gaze. 1. Make a list of essentials. On a sheet of paper, write down everything that can't be interrupted in your life. Medications, contacts, keys, documents, and routine care. Keep physical copies of essential documents. Keep simple notes with allergies, phone numbers, and medical advice. 2. Create a communication pact. Agree with your loved one on a meeting point and a time to check in if there are any network outages. Print a short list of phone numbers. If possible, have a simple radio or an offline radio app on your phone. 3. Design your energy routine. Identify your home's electrical priorities, health equipment, refrigerator, modem. Organize schedules to reduce consumption during peak heat. Store flashlights, batteries, a charged external battery, and cables in one place. 4. Ensure basic financial redundancy. Have a small amount of cash for emergencies, a second form of payment, and a plan for essential expenses for a few days. Avoid relying on a single bank for everything. 5. Reactivate neighborhood connections. Get to know 2 neighbors by name. Ask if there are elderly people, pregnant women, or people with special needs on your floor. Make a list of mutual aid supplies: water, tools, first aid, extra charger. The community is a silent generator. 6. Maintain information hygiene. Establish 2 or 3 reliable sources and maintain the 3-signal rule. Before acting, confirm information through 3 different channels. Disable unnecessary alerts during stressful periods. Less noise, more discretion. 7. Assemble a discreet analog kit. Paper, pen, tape, simple neighborhood maps, a candle with matches and scissors. These things seem small until they're not. 8. Protect your digital data with humanity. Use strong passwords, 2-factor authentication with an offline generator, and make local and cloud backups. Write down access instructions that someone you trust can use if you're unable to access your data. Security isn't a secret, it's responsible care. 9. Train your calm muscle. Twice a day for 2 minutes, breathe for 4 counts on the inhale and 6 counts on the exhale. Sleep regularly, eat mindfully. A minimally regulated body makes better decisions under pressure. 10. Build contingency plans at work. Have manual operation checklists in place for systems failure. Define who decides what, in what order, and for how long. Conduct a 30-minute rehearsal once a month. Without internet, which tasks continue? Who calls whom? Who pauses non-vital tasks? 11. Review deadlines. At the end of the month, during seasonal changes and during heat peaks, anticipate commitments that can be moved forward. During network adjustment notice periods, avoid major updates on the same day. If necessary, prepare a rollback. 12. Make an ethical commitment. In times of pressure, treat information like water. Only share what is clean. Speak with operational courtesy, short, clear, and respectful. He who guards the fire doesn't start fires. You might think this is small compared to the entire world, but the folds of time reveal themselves in gestures that fit in a pocket. What good is a grand plan if your refrigerator doesn't have a simple thermometer to let you know when the food needs attention? What good is a packed schedule if you haven't agreed with your family on a confirmation text message when messages are delayed? The strategy is sophisticated precisely because it is humble. We resolve what is within reach to free up focus on what exceeds reach. There's also a silent and decisive aspect: memory. Start a small decision log. Write down what worked on a stressful day and what didn't. At the end of each week, adjust one point of your plan based on this observation. It's the opposite of panic. It's learning, and learning becomes practical serenity. Over time, this list becomes a kind of inner compass. If life throws an unexpected wrench in the works, remember that after can also be a beginning. Every crisis reveals values and networks that were dormant. You'll discover that the neighbor you barely greeted knows someone at the health center, that your ability to organize tasks saves hours of other people's time, that your calm is more useful than any hasty opinion. The journey doesn't erase fear, but it gives it a place, and it's not a place of command. Vanga smiles without showing her teeth. The most honest sentence she gives us isn't about what will or won't happen, it's about how we'll get there. There are no guarantees, there are cadences, and cadences are learned. The future doesn't need paralyzed audiences. It needs people willing to stay, to hold the flame, to offer shade, to share the last glass of water while fixing the faucet. This is the gesture that transforms a warning into a path. If something on this journey touched you, make 3 choices now. Adopt 2 measures from the plan above today, share 1 point with someone close to you, and write a phrase for yourself that you want to remember when the afternoon seems to lose sight of the day. This phrase can be simple: I can breathe and choose. Repeat it as needed. Put it on the refrigerator. Teach it to a child. And if this video was helpful, join us so this work can continue reaching those in need. Subscribe to the Seek Profunda channel, like this video, and share your questions, fears, or experiences in the comments. If you prefer, share anonymously. Your story could be the spark someone else needs to get through the dark room. We're here with our eyes open. Let's go together. There's a moment when the light seems tired yet refuses to fade. It's in this space that Baba Vanga remains, motionless like a sentinel guarding the passage. She doesn't promise easy salvation, she offers presence. The fold may arrive discreetly, like a change of tone in the same day, and the night may gaze upon the morning without recognizing it. It's okay to feel fear. Fear informs. It just doesn't need to be the driver. What should lead is attention, simple, faithful, every day. The crossing begins within, in the place where we take responsibility before the world rushes upon us. Perhaps you've been through this video feeling like something around you is a few millimeters out of place. This feeling is a compass. It indicates that time requires a different cadence. Vanga taught us to listen without noise. When she says that after August, the world will not be the same, she doesn't push anyone to panic. She invites preparation. The question isn't what will happen, but in what condition do you want to be found when it does? The answer is never grandiose. It's a set of small, repeated gestures that protect what matters and free up focus when the unexpected knocks on the door. To turn this vision into practice, let the metaphors rest for a moment and make a plan. A simple, straightforward plan that fits into your routine and can be put into action today. It's not a closed manual, it's a testable path. Adapt it to your context, but don't postpone it. 1. Keep essentials handy. Make a short list of essential items in your life. Medications, contacts, keys, documents, work tools, and daily care items. Make physical copies of key documents and store them in a secure envelope. Photograph important receipts. Keep this folder within easy reach. 2. Communication pact. Agree on a meeting point and a fixed time to check in with those close to you in case the signal drops. Write down phone numbers on paper. Set a short SMS confirmation phrase. Teach children and the elderly to use this phrase. 3. Energy under control. Identify your home's electrical priorities, health equipment, refrigerator, modem. Organize usage schedules to reduce load during hot periods. Keep flashlights, batteries, a charged external battery, and cables in the same place. If possible, use a surge protector. 4. Financial redundancy. Set aside a small amount of cash for a few days of basic expenses. Maintain 2 payment methods and accounts with different institutions. Note down important due dates and anticipate what you can in weeks of greater risk. 5. Health without improvisation. Check prescription expiration dates. Keep a simple first aid kit with clear instructions for use. List allergies and medical contacts. Restock before you run out, not after. 6. Keep your data safe. Use strong passwords and an offline authenticator. Back up essential files locally and in the cloud. Write down access instructions for a trusted person with clear instructions on when to use them. 7. Analog tools. Paper, pen, tape, neighborhood maps, a candle with matches, scissors, and a small utility knife. Keep everything in a labeled case. Test it periodically. 8. Neighborhood network. Find out who in your building or street needs extra attention. Create a list of mutual aid supplies, water, tools, chargers, first aid. Agree on simple signals, a note on the door, a ribbon on the doorknob to indicate I'm okay or I need help. 9. Monthly rehearsal. Once a month, do a 30-minute exercise. Turn off the router and simulate system failures. Ask what's still working, who notifies whom, and in what order. Adjust the plan based on the test. 10. Information hygiene. Choose 2 or 3 reliable sources. Before acting, seek confirmation from 3 signs. Silence unhelpful alerts. On stressful days, set aside fixed times to check for updates. Outside of these times, focus on clear tasks. 11. Household microeconomics. Keep a rotating supply of water, simple foods, and hygiene items for a few days. Nothing more than what's necessary. Note expiration dates. Use and replenish regularly to avoid waste. 12. Ethics first. In times of pressure, treat information like water. Share only what is clean. Speak kindly and accurately. Don't spread rumors. Don't stir up fear. Calmness is a form of collective care. If you think this isn't enough, remember, big changes happen on very small foundations. A generator keeps a hospital running because someone checked the oil and battery a few days before. A neighborhood navigates a blackout with serenity because they coordinated simple signals. A family faces a difficult day with less friction because they practiced a reassuring phrase. Preparing doesn't ruin life. It gives it depth. You don't lose levity by having a plan. You gain the freedom to act when routine fails. There's an emotional aspect that can't be outsourced. The ability to breathe in the middle of a curve. Twice a day, pause for 2 minutes. Inhale for a count of 4. Exhale for a count of 6. Feel your feet on the ground. Tell yourself, I can choose the next step. It may seem small, but it shapes our thoughts when everything rushes. In times of convergence, those who regulate their own breathing regulate decisions. And regulated decisions save time, relationships, and resources. Also, keep your memory. At the end of each week, write down 3 things: what worked, what failed, and what you'll adjust. This practice turns warning into learning. Over time, it becomes an intimate map of your own resilience. You begin to recognize patterns that previously tired you without understanding why. And when the time comes, you'll have already built habits that protect you and those around you. None of this replaces what needs to be done at higher decision-making levels, but all of this multiplies your autonomy and that of those around you. This is how communities get through difficult times, with small plans that add up, with kind gestures that become culture, with clean information that circulates where it makes a difference. Vanga didn't ask for admiration, she asked for vigilance. Being a vigilant on your own path is an act of respect for those you love and for those who depend on you without knowing it. If something here resonated with you, take 3 simple steps now. Choose 2 actions from the plan and implement them today. Share this content with someone who needs to hear it. Write a phrase that brings you back to center when the afternoon doesn't recognize the morning. It could be, I breathe, observe, and act. Place this phrase where your eyes can see it. And so we can continue building this space of clarity and courage, I kindly ask, subscribe to the Fate Forecast channel, like this video, and leave a comment with questions or experiences, anonymously if you wish. Your voice matters. It can be the candle that lights another candle when the room grows dark. We are here with our eyes open. Let's get through this together.